The holiday season had descended upon the quaint town of Pine Ridge, where twinkling lights adorned every storefront and lamppost, casting a warm glow against the crisp December air. It was the kind of small town where everyone knew each other, where holiday traditions ran deep, and where the Christmas spirit was practically mandatory. For most residents, this was a comfort, a warm embrace of familiarity and joy. But for Alex Chin, who had moved to Pine Ridge just 3 months ago after accepting a remote position that allowed him to escape the hustle of city life, the omnipresent cheer only amplified his sense of isolation. Alex stood in front of his modest craftsman-style home, a rental that still felt more like temporary accommodation than a place he belonged. The bare exterior looked starkly out of place on a street where every other house boasted elaborate light displays, inflatable snowmen, and meticulously arranged nativity scenes. He clutched a tangled mess of Christmas lights in his hands, a peace offering to the neighborhood gods of festivity, though he wasn't entirely sure why he was bothering. Back in his apartment in Chicago, Christmas had been a quiet affair, perhaps a small tree in the corner, a few cards displayed on the mantel, and take-out Chinese food on Christmas Eve while he caught up on work. But something about Pine Ridge made him feel like he should try harder. Perhaps it was the way Mrs. Donovan from across the street had pointedly mentioned that everyone decorates for Christmas here, when she brought over a welcome pie in September. Or maybe it was the community newsletter that detailed the annual Light Up Pine Ridge contest, with categories for most traditional, most creative, and the coveted best overall display. Alex had no illusions about winning any prizes, but the bare minimum seemed necessary to avoid becoming the neighborhood Grinch. The truth was, the holidays had always been complicated for Alex. Growing up in a household where his parents worked through most holidays, Christmas had never been the magical experience depicted in movies. As an adult, he'd grown accustomed to spending the season alone or with casual friends who had nowhere else to go. It wasn't sad, he told himself. It was practical. Still, something about being in Pine Ridge, with its overwhelming community spirit, made him feel the absence of connection more acutely than he had in years. So here he was, staring at a jumble of lights that had somehow become even more tangled since he'd pulled them from their box. The late afternoon sun was already beginning to set, casting long shadows across his front yard. If he was going to make any progress, he needed to start now. Alex sighed, dropped the lights onto his porch steps, and went to retrieve the ladder from the garage. At least he could say he tried. The aluminum ladder was heavier than it looked, and Alex found himself struggling to maneuver it into position. Just as he was about to lose his grip, a voice called out from the sidewalk. "Need a hand with that?" Alex turned to see a man approaching with quick, purposeful strides. He was bundled in a blue puffer jacket, a knit beanie pulled over sandy blonde hair, his breath visible in the cold air. Something about his easy smile made Alex's stomach do an unexpected flip. "I'm fine," Alex replied automatically, even as the ladder slipped another inch in his grasp. Pride had always been his downfall. The stranger raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Right. And I'm Santa Claus." Without waiting for permission, he jogged up the walkway and grabbed the other end of the ladder. "I'm Jamie, by the way. Jamie Sullivan. I live in the blue Victorian 2 doors down." The name clicked into place in Alex's mind. Mrs. Donovan had mentioned Jamie, the local elementary school art teacher who organized the town's holiday craft fair. According to neighborhood gossip, he was also single, gay, and such a nice young man. Alex had dismissed the not-so-subtle attempt at matchmaking at the time. "Alex Chin," he replied, adjusting his grip as they positioned the ladder against the eaves of the house. "Thanks for the help." "No problem," Jamie said, stepping back to assess the situation. His gaze drifted to the tangled mess of lights on the porch steps. "First time decorating the old Henderson place?" Alex nodded, suddenly self-conscious about the pathetic display. "Is it that obvious?" Jamie laughed, a warm sound that seemed to cut through the December chill. "Only because I watched old Mr. Henderson put up the exact same lights in the exact same pattern for the 15 years I've lived here. He had it down to a science." He paused, studying Alex with curious blue eyes. "You're not much of a Christmas person, are you?" There was no judgment in his tone, just genuine curiosity, but Alex still felt defensive. "I appreciate the aesthetics," he said stiffly. "I'm just not used to all this." He gestured vaguely at the neighborhood, where Christmas seemed less like a holiday and more like a competitive sport. Jamie nodded thoughtfully. "Pine Ridge can be a bit much if you're not used to it. But there's something nice about a town that goes all in on celebration, don't you think? Like we're all in on the same beautiful secret." There was something disarming about Jamie's earnestness that made it hard for Alex to maintain his cynical facade. "I suppose," he conceded. though I might appreciate it more if I weren't currently tangled in the world's most complicated knot of lights. Jamie's eyes lit up. Well, that's an easy fix. I happen to be an expert in Christmas light detanglement. It's a very niche skill, but useful this time of year. He picked up the ball of lights and began working at the knots with nimble fingers. So, what brings you to our little town? We don't get many newcomers, especially ones who voluntarily leave the city. As Jamie worked on the lights, Alex found himself explaining his job as a software developer, his desire for a change of pace after years in Chicago, and how he'd stumbled upon Pine Ridge almost by accident during a weekend road trip. There was something easy about talking to Jamie, who listened attentively and asked thoughtful questions. "And do you miss the city?" Jamie asked, triumphantly holding up a now untangled strand of lights. Alex considered the question. "Sometimes. I miss the anonymity, the restaurants, the energy. But there's something to be said for quiet streets and stars you can actually see at night." Jamie nodded, handing Alex the lights. "Pine Ridge grows on you. Give it time." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Speaking of time, we're losing daylight. Want some help getting these up? I've got nowhere to be, and 4 hands are better than 2. Alex hesitated. He wasn't used to accepting help, especially from attractive strangers who made him feel oddly self-conscious. But the thought of tackling the project alone was daunting, and Jamie's offer seemed genuine. "If you're sure you don't mind," Alex said finally. "I'd appreciate it." Jamie's smile widened. "Great. I should warn you, though, I take Christmas decorating very seriously. By the time we're done, your house might give the Griswolds a run for their money." Alex laughed despite himself. "Let's aim for somewhere between visible from space and neighborhood pariah." "Deal," Jamie said, picking up the end of the light strand. "I'll hand these up to you if you want to climb the ladder. Just follow the line of the roof." What Alex had anticipated being a frustrating chore transformed into something unexpectedly enjoyable. Jamie kept up a steady stream of conversation as they worked, sharing stories about Pine Ridge and its eccentric residents. He pointed out the house where the mayor lived. "She has a collection of ceramic pigs that has to be seen to be believed. The local bakery owner's home. Best cinnamon rolls you'll ever taste, but only if you get there before 9, and the town's unofficial historian. Don't get him started on the Great Blizzard of '86 unless you have an hour to spare." As Alex secured lights along the roof line, he found himself laughing at Jamie's anecdotes and offering stories of his own in return. The initial awkwardness between them gave way to an easy rhythm, punctuated by moments that made Alex's heart beat a little faster, Jamie's hand steadying the ladder, their fingers brushing as they passed the lights back and forth. The way Jamie looked up at him with undisguised appreciation when he thought Alex wasn't noticing. "So, no Christmas traditions at all?" Jamie asked as they moved to decorating the porch railing. "Not even a favorite holiday movie or cookie recipe passed down through generations?" Alex shrugged, wrapping lights around a column. "My parents were always working. Christmas was just another day, except with presents in the morning and maybe a special dinner if Mom wasn't on call." He paused, remembering. "Though we did always watch It's a Wonderful Life. My dad loved that movie." Jamie nodded thoughtfully. "That's something. What about now? Any adult traditions you've created for yourself?" Alex hesitated, suddenly embarrassed by the emptiness of his holiday routine. "Not really. I usually work through the holidays. Take advantage of the quiet office." Instead of the pity Alex expected, Jamie's expression showed something closer to determination. "Well, you're in Pine Ridge now. We have enough traditions to go around." He stepped back to admire their work on the porch. "Speaking of which, we're missing something important." Before Alex could ask what he meant, Jamie jogged to his truck parked at the curb and returned with a small paper bag. "I was at the garden center earlier and picked up a few extra decorations, including this." He pulled out a small sprig of green leaves and white berries tied with a red ribbon. "Mistletoe." Alex felt his cheeks warm despite the cold air. "That seems presumptuous." Jamie laughed, but Alex noticed a hint of color in his cheeks as well. "It's traditional. Besides, you never know when Santa might bring someone special to your door." He winked, but there was a question in his eyes, an uncertainty that made Alex realize Jamie was as nervous as he was. "Where do you suggest we put it?" Alex asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Jamie pointed to the porch ceiling just above the front door. "Right there. Perfect spot to catch unsuspecting carolers." "Do people still carol? Is that a thing that happens outside of movies? In Pine Ridge?" "Absolutely. The church choir does rounds every weekend in December. They're actually quite good." Jamie handed Alex the mistletoe. "Would you like to do the honors, or shall I?" Alex took the mistletoe, their fingers touching briefly. "I've got it." He climbed the ladder once more, securing the sprig to the porch ceiling with the attached hook. When he descended, Jamie was standing closer than before, his expression unreadable in the growing darkness. "Perfect," Jamie said softly, looking up at the mistletoe and then back at Alex. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Alex cleared his throat. "We should finish the bushes before it gets completely dark." If Jamie was disappointed by the deflection, he didn't show it. "Right. Bushes. Very important." They worked in companionable silence for a while, wrapping the remaining lights around the shrubs that lined the front of the house. When they finished, Jamie plugged everything in, and suddenly Alex's previously unremarkable home was transformed into a warm, inviting beacon of holiday cheer. The white lights outlined the roofline and porch, casting a gentle glow over the property. "It's not going to win any contests," Jamie admitted, standing back to admire their work, "but it looks like home." Home. The word resonated with Alex in unexpected ways. For the first time since moving to Pine Ridge, his house felt less like a temporary stop and more like somewhere he might belong. "Thank you," Alex said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "I couldn't have done this without you." Jamie smiled, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the Christmas lights. "Happy to help. That's what neighbors are for." There was that moment again, the one from under the mistletoe, a pause filled with unspoken questions and possibilities. This time, Alex didn't look away. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" he asked, surprising himself with the invitation. "Or hot chocolate? I think I have some packets somewhere." Jamie's smile widened. "Hot chocolate sounds perfect. I'm freezing." Inside, Alex's living room revealed the stark contrast between the festive exterior they'd created and his minimalist interior. No tree, no decorations, not even a holiday-scented candle. Just clean lines, neutral colors, and a conspicuous absence of Christmas spirit. Jamie didn't comment on the lack of decorations, though Alex caught him glancing around curiously as they shed their coats and moved to the kitchen. While Alex prepared the hot chocolate, Jamie leaned against the counter, asking questions about Alex's work and how he was adjusting to small-town life. "It's different," Alex admitted, handing Jamie a steaming mug. "Sometimes I miss the anonymity of the city. Everyone here knows everything about everyone else." Jamie blew on his hot chocolate before taking a sip. "That's true. Mrs. Donovan told me you were single and very handsome the day you moved in." His eyes twinkled with amusement over the rim of his mug. Alex nearly choked on his drink. "She what?" "Oh yes. She's the town's unofficial matchmaker. Has been since her husband passed 10 years ago." Jamie's expression softened. "She means well. And she wasn't wrong about the handsome part." The compliment hung in the air between them. Alex felt his cheeks warm for what seemed like the 100th time that evening. He wasn't used to this. The open flirtation, the easy way Jamie seemed to navigate conversations that left Alex tongue-tied. "She mentioned you too," Alex admitted. "Said you were the town's most eligible bachelor?" Jamie laughed. "In a town of 3,000 people, that's not saying much." He took another sip of his hot chocolate. "Though I'm flattered she put me on your radar." "You would have been anyway," Alex said before he could stop himself. "On my radar, I mean." Jamie's smile turned softer, more genuine. "Good to know." They moved to the living room, where the conversation flowed more easily than Alex would have expected. Jamie told stories about growing up in Pine Ridge, about his decision to return after college to teach at his old elementary school, about the joy he found in sharing art with children. Alex shared his own journey, his childhood in Chicago's suburbs, his love of coding that had started in middle school, his gradual disillusionment with corporate life that had led him to seek something different. "So what's next?" Jamie asked, setting his empty mug on the coffee table. "Now that you've escaped the corporate grind and decorated your house for Christmas, what's the master plan?" Alex considered the question. "I don't know," he admitted. "I didn't really think beyond get out of Chicago and find somewhere quiet to work. Pine Ridge was supposed to be temporary, but, Jamie prompted when Alex trailed off. "But I'm starting to see the appeal of putting down roots somewhere," Alex finished. "Even if the neighbors are nosy and Christmas is practically a competitive sport." Jamie laughed. "Just wait until you see the 4th of July parade. Christmas is subtle by comparison." As the evening progressed, Alex found himself increasingly aware of Jamie, the way he gestured when he was excited about something, how his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the slight dimple in his left cheek. It had been a long time since Alex had felt this kind of attraction, this immediate connection with someone. "I should probably head home," Jamie said eventually, glancing at his watch. "I have an early faculty meeting tomorrow." Alex nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "Of course." They walked to the door together, and Alex was suddenly, acutely aware of the mistletoe hanging just outside. Jamie seemed to realize it at the same moment, his eyes flicking upward briefly before meeting Alex's gaze. "Thank you for the hot chocolate," Jamie said, his voice softer than before. "And the company. Thank you for saving me from a Christmas light disaster," Alex replied, equally quiet. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Jamie took a small step forward, closing the distance between them. "You know," he said, "the mistletoe was my idea, but we never actually tested it out." Alex's heart hammered in his chest. "That seems like an oversight." Jamie's smile was slow and warm. "Definitely. We should probably make sure it works." For scientific purposes, Alex agreed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Exactly." When Jamie leaned in, Alex met him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question rather than a demand. But when Alex's hand came up to rest on Jamie's shoulder, the kiss deepened, becoming something more certain, more promising. Jamie tasted like chocolate and possibility, and Alex found himself lost in the moment, in the unexpected joy of connection. When they finally pulled apart, Jamie's eyes were bright, his smile wider than ever. "Well," he said, a little breathlessly, "I'd say the mistletoe works perfectly." Alex laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Definitely functional." Jamie reached for the door but paused with his hand on the knob. "The town Christmas festival is this weekend," he said. "There's a tree lighting ceremony, hot cider, local vendors selling crafts, the whole small-town Christmas experience. Would you want to go? With me?" The invitation hung in the air between them. A month ago, Alex would have declined automatically. Christmas festivals weren't his thing. Crowds of cheerful strangers celebrating a holiday he'd never fully embraced held little appeal. But standing here now, with the memory of Jamie's kiss still fresh on his lips, Alex found himself nodding. "I'd like that," he said, and was surprised to realize he meant it. Jamie's smile was worth any amount of forced holiday cheer. "Great. I'll pick you up at 6 on Saturday." He opened the door, stepping out onto the porch illuminated by their handiwork. "Good night, Alex." "Good night, Jamie." After Jamie left, Alex stood in his doorway for a long moment, looking at the lights they'd hung together. His house looked different now, warmer, more inviting, more like somewhere a person might actually live rather than just exist. For the first time since moving to Pine Ridge, Alex felt a sense of anticipation about the future, about the possibilities that might unfold in this small town he'd chosen almost at random. The next few days passed in a blur of work and text messages from Jamie, little updates about his day, questions about Alex's, and the occasional flirtatious comment that made Alex smile at his phone like a teenager. By the time Saturday arrived, Alex found himself genuinely looking forward to the festival, a feeling that had less to do with Christmas spirit and everything to do with the man who would be accompanying him. Jamie arrived precisely at 6, bundled in a festive red scarf that brought out the color in his cheeks. "Ready for the full Pine Ridge Christmas experience?" he asked as Alex joined him on the porch. "As I'll ever be," Alex replied, locking his door. "Lead the way." The town square was transformed for the festival. Every tree was wrapped in lights, vendor booths lined the perimeter selling everything from handmade ornaments to hot chocolate, and in the center stood a massive pine tree, currently unlit but clearly the focal point of the evening's festivities. Families with children, elderly couples, and groups of teenagers all mingled in the square, creating a buzz of excitement and conversation. "This is a lot," Alex said as they entered the crowded space. Jamie squeezed his hand reassuringly. "We'll start slow. Hot cider first, then a lap around the vendors, and we'll work our way up to the carol singing." "Carol singing?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "You didn't mention that part." Jamie's laugh was warm in the cold evening air. "Don't worry. It's not mandatory. Though you might change your mind once you've had Mrs. Wilson's spiked cider." As they made their way through the festival, Alex was surprised to find himself enjoying the experience. Jamie seemed to know everyone, introducing Alex to what felt like half the town, teachers from his school, former students now in high school, the owners of local businesses. Each introduction was accompanied by a warm smile and often a knowing look when Jamie mentioned they were spending the evening together. By the time they reached the cider stand, Alex had been welcomed by more people in 1 hour than in the 3 months he'd lived in Pine Ridge. "See? Not so terrible," Jamie said as they sipped their cider and browsed a booth selling hand-carved wooden ornaments. "I admit it has its charms," Alex conceded, "though I think that has more to do with the company than the event itself." Jamie's pleased smile made something warm unfurl in Alex's chest. "Flatterer. And here I thought you were warming up to the Christmas spirit." "Baby steps," Alex replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. There was something infectious about Jamie's enthusiasm, about the genuine joy he took in the season. As they continued through the festival, Alex found himself opening up more about his complicated relationship with the holidays, how his parents' careers as doctors had meant Christmas was often interrupted by emergency calls, how he'd learned early not to expect much from the season, how he'd carried that expectation of disappointment into adulthood. That explains a lot, Jamie said thoughtfully as they found a quiet bench away from the main crowd. About why you keep people at arm's length. Alex blinked, surprised by the observation. I don't. You do, Jamie interrupted gently. It's not just Christmas. You've built a life where you don't have to depend on anyone or anything that might let you down. The insight was uncomfortably accurate. Alex stared at his empty cider cup, unsure how to respond. That's perceptive. Jamie shrugged. I teach elementary school art. You get good at reading people when you're trying to figure out why a kid is drawing their family in all black. He bumped his shoulder against Alex's. It's not a criticism, just an observation. Before Alex could respond, the mayor's voice came over the loudspeaker, announcing that the tree lighting would begin in 5 minutes. Around them, people began moving toward the center of the square. We should get a good spot, Jamie said, standing and offering his hand to Alex. The tree lighting is the best part. Alex took Jamie's hand, allowing himself to be led through the crowd. They found a place near the front, where the massive pine tree stood dark against the night sky. The mayor gave a brief speech about community and tradition that Alex barely heard, too distracted by the warmth of Jamie's hand in his and the way their shoulders pressed together in the crowd. Then came the countdown, the entire town joining in, voices raised in unified anticipation. 10, 9, 8. Alex found himself counting along, caught up in the collective excitement despite himself. 3, 2, 1. The tree blazed to life, thousands of lights illuminating at once, from the lowest branches to the star at the very top. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, followed by applause and cheers. It was, Alex had to admit, a spectacular sight, the massive tree glowing against the dark sky, casting colorful reflections on the faces of everyone gathered around. He turned to share the moment with Jamie and found him already looking back, his expression soft with something that made Alex's breath catch. In the glow of the Christmas lights, with the sounds of the crowd fading into the background, it felt like they were in their own private world. What? Alex asked, suddenly self-conscious under Jamie's gaze. Nothing, Jamie said, his smile widening. Just, I'm glad you're here. The simple statement shouldn't have affected Alex as deeply as it did. But there was something in Jamie's voice, in the way he looked at Alex like he was something precious, that broke through defenses Alex hadn't even realized he was maintaining. Me too, Alex replied, and meant it more than he'd expected to. As the crowd began to disperse, moving toward the other activities, Jamie and Alex remained where they were, watching the lights twinkle on the massive tree. It was Jamie who finally broke the comfortable silence between them. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your Christmas spirit doing now? Alex pretended to consider the question seriously. I'd say we've moved from a solid 2 to maybe a 6. Significant progress. Jamie laughed. I'll take it. By Christmas Eve, we'll have you at a 9 minimum. The casual reference to them still being together weeks from now sent a warm thrill through Alex. It had been less than a week since Jamie had helped him hang those Christmas lights, and already Alex couldn't imagine his life in Pine Ridge without him. Is that a challenge? Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. Absolutely, Jamie replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I happen to be an expert at Christmas spirit rehabilitation. I look forward to seeing your techniques, Alex said, surprising himself with the flirtatious tone. Jamie's smile turned softer, more serious. So do I. As they made their way back through the festival, stopping to listen to carolers and sample Christmas cookies from the bakery's booth, Alex found himself thinking about Jamie's earlier observation about how he kept people at arm's length. How he'd built a life designed to minimize disappointment. It was true, he realized. Even his move to Pine Ridge had been calculated to require minimal investment in relationships. Remote work, a rental house, a town where he knew no one and had no ties. Yet here he was, hand in hand with a man he'd known less than a week, feeling more connected than he had in years. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. By the time they returned to Alex's house, the night air had grown colder, their breath visible in small clouds as they stood on the porch illuminated by the lights they'd hung together. Thank you for tonight, Alex said, suddenly shy despite the easy conversation they'd maintained all evening. I had a better time than I expected. Jamie's smile was warm in the glow of the Christmas lights. High praise indeed. Does this mean you might be open to more holiday activities? Because there's a gingerbread house competition next weekend that I happen to be judging, and I could use a supportive face in the crowd. The invitation was casual, but Alex heard the question beneath it. A question about more than just gingerbread houses. About whether this thing between them was going somewhere. I'd like that, Alex said, meeting Jamie's gaze steadily. Though I should warn you, I have strong opinions about proper gingerbread structural integrity. Jamie laughed, the sound bright in the quiet night. I would expect nothing less. He stepped closer, his expression growing more serious. I like you, Alex. More than I expected after such a short time. The honesty in Jamie's voice made Alex's heart beat faster. I like you too, he admitted, the words feeling both inadequate and monumental. Good, Jamie said softly. Because I'm really hoping that mistletoe works more than once. Alex glanced up at the sprig still hanging above his door, then back at Jamie's hopeful expression. Only one way to find out, he murmured, closing the distance between them. This kiss was different from their first, more certain, less questioning. Jamie's hands came up to frame Alex's face, gentle but sure, while Alex's arms wrapped around Jamie's waist, pulling him closer. In the cold December air, with Christmas lights twinkling around them, Alex felt something shift inside him, a wall coming down, a door opening to possibilities he hadn't allowed himself to consider. When they finally pulled apart, Jamie's eyes were bright, his smile wide and genuine. Definitely works multiple times, he said, a little breathlessly. Alex laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. Good to know. We should probably test it regularly, just to be sure. I like the way you think, Jamie replied, stealing another quick kiss before reluctantly stepping back. But I should go. Early morning tomorrow, the kids are making holiday cards for the retirement home. Alex nodded, not wanting the evening to end but understanding that it had to. Text me when you get home? The simple request revealed more than Alex had intended, his growing attachment, his concern for Jamie's safety, his desire to maintain connection even when they were apart. But Jamie's expression softened at the words, his smile turning tender. I will, he promised. Good night, Alex. Good night, Jamie. As Alex watched Jamie walk to his car, he was struck by how much had changed in the span of a week. His house was decorated for Christmas. He'd attended a holiday festival voluntarily, and most significantly, he'd met someone who made him want to lower his carefully constructed defenses. Someone who saw his reluctance to embrace the holiday spirit not as a character flaw, but as a natural response to past disappointments. Someone who made him want to try anyway. Maybe, Alex thought as he closed his door, Christmas in Pine Ridge wouldn't be so bad after all. And maybe, just maybe, he'd found something more valuable than holiday spirit. He'd found a reason to believe in new beginnings, in unexpected connections, in the possibility of joy he hadn't been looking for. As promised, his phone buzzed a few minutes later with a text from Jamie, home safe. Already looking forward to seeing you again. Sweet dreams. Snowflake. Alex smiled at his phone, typing back a response before heading to bed. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he fell asleep looking forward to the holiday season and all the possibilities it might bring, not because of Christmas itself, but because of the person he'd be sharing it with. And if he dreamed of mistletoe and Christmas lights and a certain art teacher with a contagious smile, well, that was nobody's business but his own. Total_char_count. 18,836.